and welcome to your award-winning The Reasons I'm Broke podcast, bringing you the reasons we're broke, typically every week through news and headlines ranging from comics, movies, TV, video games, and more. But for me specifically, I'm going to continue to be broke because of this comic line from Udon, which they keep releasing great one-shots and series, and more than just comics, but they also have graphic novels and manga. So I am happy to bring back Matt Moylan from Udon. Welcome back, Matt.
Thanks for having me back.
As promised, there are new comics coming out for this fall, and we're going to touch on a lot of these. And this first one is one that made me very happy when you mentioned it last time. I don't think you mentioned the title of it, but off mic you did say that there was another Darkstalkers comic, and now we can actually discuss it. And this is the one-shot for Hsien-Ko, the Darkstalker Hunter. And the solicitation roughly reads about how she will navigate the realm between life and death and pursues other creatures of the night. And more specifically, she will face the Nurse War and must rely on her skills to prevail. So this is right on time for Halloween. Comes out October 25th. What can you tell us about this latest one-shot from Darkstalkers?
Well, we're getting into now our twice-a-year Darkstalkers book, so you can expect one in the early part of the year and one around Halloween going forward.
Yes.
So we picked Hsien-Ko because Ken Siu-Chong, who's the longest running Udon writer, that's like his favorite Darkstalkers character, and she's never really worked into the main story very well. Like he's always been like, oh, we got to do Morrigan, we got to do Dimitri, and we got to do Jeddah and stuff. So he's always wanted to do just a Hsien-Ko story. It should be pretty fun, mixed in a bit of paranormal investigations TV shows type of a thing. And Nurse Noir is a original Udon character, so I don't want to give away too much about her, but you'll find out in the issue. And yeah, we've got Hsien-Ko, we've got her sister Moylan. This is the one where they have similar Japanese and North American names but different, so it's Lin and Lele in Japan, and Moylan and Hsien-Ko in North America. So, but yeah, Hsien-Ko and Moylan. If people don't know, Hsien-Ko is like a Chinese ghost type of a ghost, kind of. It's not really a ghost. It's kind of a ghost, kind of a zombie, kind of a vampire. It's like their own thing. So that's what Hsien-Ko is, and her sister. They're sort of cursed together. Her sister often turns into like a talisman that ends up on Hsien-Ko's hat, and sort of gives her extra power boosts and stuff.
Yeah, I was a little curious as to which character you were going to go with as far as the one-shot, because I'm like, okay, well, maybe they're going to go with who would be a little bit more popular, like a Dimitri one-shot, which we hadn't seen from this particular line of books, at least lately with Felicia and Morgan. And so I'm glad to hear that it's more of an art choice of the creator behind it, going, okay, this is who I want to do the story of. Because then you can, instead of assigning, hey, we need a story for this one-shot character, it's, okay, you have a story to tell, let's go ahead and move forward with it.
So yeah, like I said, Ken's a big fan of Hsien-Ko. The art's by Tovio Rogers. He did the Felicia one-shot before this, and he's doing some good stuff, and we're going to be doing plenty more with him. He's only done a few comics for Udon so far, but he's got the energy of early Udon books, and he's getting better with every book too.
So without giving too much away, because it might spoil who the character is, but Nurse Noir, would this be their first appearance in Darkstalkers?
Yeah, so this is the first time we've used this character, but they have some connections to other Darkstalkers characters, so we'll find out in the issue.
Gotcha. Okay, I was a little afraid of asking that question because I didn't know if it was like, it's really Ken in disguise or something like that, something weird.
It might not seem like it if you read just one of them, but there is a slowly building through plot happening in all these Darkstalkers one-shots.
Oh, I like that.
It'll become more obvious in the next one that's coming out early 2024.
Well, and I definitely want everyone to buy this one-shot because, as you were saying, we're now up to 2 a year. I want this to sell so well that Udon has to go, okay, well, we got to do this quarterly. Like, let's put all the Darkstalkers in here. So I'm hoping that people really pick up this issue, especially of Darkstalkers. Again, available October 25th, Hsien-Ko. I've put up the tweets before, but there will be more posts about this. Just make sure to tell your comic shop to order any and all of these titles. So this next one is going to celebrate 20 years of Udon with Street Fighter Omega. So this is going to be a one-shot featuring new illustrations from 24 artists. And this special anniversary edition brings together the World Warriors and new challengers. This one's coming out, I believe, a week before the Darkstalkers one-shot on October 18th.
Yeah, so this is a kind of a different project that it does look like a comic book on the outside. It's not exactly a comic book on the inside, and it's not just a pinup book either. What it is inside, you'll open it and you'll find 24 fake comic covers of a series called Street Fighter Omega. So like Street Fighter Omega number 1 to 24. We're trying to sort of tell a story and add to our comic book lore just through the covers. So they'll have a scene that's maybe a little more story based than some of our covers usually are. And there might be like a burst on there that helps explain what's going on. And at the very end of the book, we'll get just a paragraph about what actually happened in each issue. And this is doing a couple things. One is just a celebration of 20 years of Udon Street Fighter comics, and kind of everybody gets to do a cover, sort of like all the Udon guys. And we've got some of our older guys who haven't been around for a while, like Arnold Sang, one of the Udon founders. He's worked in video games and all kinds of things since then. He came back to do a piece. I'm really excited about that. And lots of the current guys like Tovio, who I just mentioned, he got to do a cover. He got to do one of them, and Chamba and Panzer and all these guys that we use regularly, Edwin Huang. So one of the goals is just to celebrate the 20th anniversary, but also we because there's kind of a necessary time jump since we're going to Street Fighter 6 after this, kind of forced to do a time jump, because it's always been a problem with the comics is the age of Ken's son, because he was born in our comic storyline. So whatever age he is, if we're using the games, like whatever age he is, kind of sets a marker for how far along we've been. So his son is probably, I don't know they haven't said his exact age, but he's got to be like 11, 12, something like that in the games now. So, and we've incorporated Street Fighter 6 stuff into our comic universe as well. So this is going to fill in a few years of continuity of what happened, and also let us include in our lore some small things and some big things that we just never got to. For example, say we never really did the main story of Street Fighter 5, so you'll see that sort of told through covers. The main story with like the Black Moons, and I don't know if you're familiar with the game, you'll know what that's all about. So that kind of thing, or bringing in some characters that we never got to from eras like say Remy is a Street Fighter 3 character that we've just never used. So you'll see him, at least he's part of the Street Fighter universe now, and we could go back and use him again later. Or say Cody becoming mayor of Metro City, things like that. So it should be a fun one shot.
Yeah, it's a unique way to tell that story, as you were saying, to tell the lore of it. Do you hope to, after obviously the focus is Street Fighter 6, but later on in the future, do you hope to go back and maybe expand Street Fighter Omega or some of these plot points that you wanted to touch on into full series?
Oh yeah, if people tell us like, oh, I've got to see that story, I've got to see that issue, that's got to be a full book or a full mini series. So we can always go back and actually tell these stories if people really want to see the bigger details about them.
Yeah, that's awesome, because then there's a ton of material there that could probably feed into several years of publishing. So that's exciting. I really like that. I like that it's kind of like here's where the story would have been. I mean, I can't go an episode without bringing it up, but kind of like the 5-film arc for Zack Snyder, where he was like, this is what I would have done in the last 2 movies, and maybe in the future it'll happen. This is sort of what this reminds me of a little bit of, like, here's if we had explored all of that in between the plot points. And I do like that you guys are doing that.
Yeah, and it's always been that way with the Street Fighter comics because it's based on the game lore. Although our comic is not exactly the same as the games, but there's always stuff that you just assume has to have happened, but we haven't shown it. Like the very first Street Fighter issue starts with the final match of the first Street Fighter tournament from Street Fighter 1. But we've never shown anything else from that tournament. And we finally did this year when we published the Sagat graphic novel. You get to see more of the Street Fighter 1 tournament. So yeah, we can always go back and tell stories along the timeline.
And how strict did you have to be as far as filling in those gaps and putting in the plot points when working with Capcom and playing with that lore?
They seem to be okay. It depends what regime you're on too. We've had some that are because Capcom is changing all the time. Like the producer of Street Fighter has changed a few times. The people working at Capcom. So sometimes they're like, go nuts. We really want you to be different. Or sometimes they'll be like, you gotta really nail this plot point, and this character can't do this at this time. Like in the Sagat graphic novel, we had Rainbow Mika's trainer, Yoko Harmageddon, as like a younger version of herself, and they told us, no, we don't think she'd be old enough for this era. Why don't you make up her mother instead? We're like, okay, so we made up her Yoko Harmageddon's mother to be a character where we wanted to actually be her. But so they'll give us suggestions like that sometimes. It's been a while since they've given us any, like, you can't do this, or you had any problems with our story ideas. Usually they're making sure we stay on point with the character designs lately. It's been the last couple of years, Capcom has, because over the years there have been a ton of inconsistent character designs and different official artworks. Like Chun-Li might have 8 spikes on her bracelet or 6 spikes on her bracelet, or the way Morrigan's wings are designed has changed a few times. So they've been really hunkered down lately. They've like, we understand it's been inconsistent, but we decided this is the standard version now. So it's been good. It's been good and bad. Sometimes, we'll have done something like, oh, that's not the official version anymore. Okay. Because they're figuring out as they go too. Because they don't, necessarily use, say, I don't know, every character from Street Fighter 3 all the time right now, right? So maybe they haven't decided on all of that yet. But no, it's been good.
Well, that's good to hear. And it sounds like even though they're moving forward, they're like, this is how the character looks. I forget they call those like character sheet designs or something, where they'll say stick to this. I've seen that they do that with like DC Comics and some of the bigger publishers especially, but that they're still letting you tell these different stories, and that's great to hear. I know we've heard it in the past with people like IDW and Sega, how Sonic the Hedgehog, I know that can be a little tight as far as storytelling, but it seems like things are still going, you're still able to tell the stories you want to tell with all the creatives at Udon. And we had mentioned the future of Street Fighter, so we're going into Street Fighter 6, and the latest solicitation, it is now in the latest previews catalog. So if you're doing your previews order for the month, make sure to drop this in there. It is Street Fighter 6 Evolution Special number 1. Ongoing collaboration with Udon and Capcom. Features 3 stories with characters like Rashid, Cammy, DJ, Luke, Jamie. And introduces a new character, AKI. Am I pronouncing that one right?
Actually, I haven't. Well, we've always just said it's Aki.
Okay.
I haven't actually asked them to pronounce it like that, but it seems to be just like the character of Fong in Street Fighter 5 is the same. It's an acronym, but they just say the letters. So I'm pretty sure it's Aki. And yeah, so this was actually originally a project Capcom hired us to do rather than, something we pitched to them. So they hired Udon to create this comic for EVO, which is one of the big competitive fighting game events. It's not just for Street Fighter, but other fighting games too. So they asked us if we could make a comic for them that they could give away at EVO at the beginning of August to anyone who was registered to play competitively, basically. They call it the Capcom Pro Tour. So anybody who's registered to play could just come up to the Capcom booth and get a free copy of this comic. But of course, we want to eventually give everybody the opportunity to read it. So it was only a couple thousand that they produced for EVO. Now we're doing a mass release in November of the same book, so everyone can get to read it.
Yeah, that's on November 25th. And what an awesome opportunity. I'm assuming they let you make sure to check out these other titles from Udon in that edition of EVO?
Yeah.
Good.
So it was half Capcom ads and half Udon ads. Although the Udon ads are also technically Capcom ads, I guess. But no, so it's a cool little story. Just like the Street Fighter 6 miniseries we did, that's a very collaborative issue. So Capcom gave us they told us, here's the 3 matchups we want to do. So it's 3 short stories. Capcom wrote 2 of them, and I wrote 1 of them after they'd chosen the characters. In terms of writing, they actually gave us dialogue scripts. So it's still some work to convert it into like a comic book, something that the artist can use. So we did a bit of adaptation of Capcom's story that they gave us. They seemed to be happy with the result in the end. Yeah, so 3 stories. And this is I'm not sure if they've officially announced when Aki is going to be released yet. I believe it's just fall this year. So that could be, I don't know, it could be September, October, November, December. We don't know yet.
Yeah.
So it could come out just after she's released, or could come out before she shows up. But she's a poison-based character. Everyone seems to have seen that. I mean, I can say that because it's in the comic and it's technically out.
Right.
But you'll get some hints at her backstory for sure, and connections to other Street Fighter characters.
Yeah, and this is going to have art by artists such as Hanzo Steinbeck, Tovio Rogers, and Jeffrey Chamba Cruz. The other story collaborator, you mentioned you were one of them, but just to get the name on there, is Takayuki Nakayama.
Yeah, he is the, oh my gosh, I'm going to always mix up if he's the producer or the director. He's one of those things. There's two guys and I get mixed up which one is which. But yeah, he provided the, no, we didn't know that he wrote them because they just came from Capcom. I mean, we talked to him now and then, but he mentioned on Twitter at some point, like, oh, I actually did these story ideas myself. It's like, oh, okay, cool. So yeah, it's basically all the Street Fighter 6 comics that are labeled Street Fighter 6 so far have been Udon Capcom collaborations in terms of story.
Yeah, okay, so that makes sense too, because I know in some of the Street Fighter comics it'll say story by Capcom, and I was always curious as to like if it was a several writers that pitched into this, or in this case it might have just been Takayuki that wrote a lot of those.
Yeah, we asked Capcom if, like, do you want credit beside, like, do you want specific credits? And they just told us, well, it was kind of a, the Street Fighter team came up with some of this stuff and a lot of people worked on it. So we'll just say Capcom in general for the story.
Gotcha. Awesome. So once again, the 3 titles that you can pre-order right now at your local comic shop or at your favorite online retailer: Hsien-Ko, Darkstalkers, Street Fighter Omega, and Street Fighter 6 Evolution Special #1. And there will be, once again, check out our Twitter and our social media, because we will once again post up these comics, the images, the solicitations, so that you can go to your local comic shop or retailer and let them know to add these titles to your subscription. So Matt, obviously from last time, you have more than the Street Fighter comics available from Udon. Can you tell us what other graphic novels? I really, really liked the Sagat one. That was incredible. I really enjoyed that hardcover. But even outside of Street Fighter, what other graphic novels or manga do you have coming from, or even art books from Udon?
Well, we are doing a second graphic novel in the series Random Views, which is an original IP created by Jeffrey Cruz, who's also known as Chamba, scripted by his friend Leonard Birmingham. Random Views is it's about an other dimensional package delivery company So this there's a human gets, and you find in the first graphic novel this human Reynaldo who's like a buff. I don't know. He's kind of like a retro 50s looking guy.
Yeah, the big sideburns and everything.
Yeah. But he gets lost. He ends up in this other dimension, which is random. It's everything. There's talking refrigerator and superhero penguins and all kinds of things. Bouncer robot gorillas and stuff. The one of the team members is like a talking jelly bean, one of the delivery guys. He's named Bloob, so he can he's like an infinite bag of holding from so they can like stick packages inside him. He basically eats them and can store anything as much as he wants inside himself. It's wacky adventures delivering weird stuff to weird characters and trying not to cause any large explosions. The main team members, Reynaldo, Bloob, and the third main team member, Melody, who's a silent girl but she's kind of always helping instigate some of the trouble and stuff that they get into. They drive around in a hot rod that is powered by a trapped demon in the engine. So they're usually trying to convince him like, oh, give us some extra power. I'll feed you like I don't know, a giant slug. You love those. I'll feed you when we're done, kind of a thing. So it's a wacky, weird thing with weird character designs. It's you don't have to have read the first Random Views graphic novel, but they're very independent. You get everything you need up front of who these characters are. You don't have to have read the first one, but the first one is available. And you want to grab it off Amazon. Yeah, both. So 2 original graphic novels. The second one is new, and it's going to be coming out close to the end of the year.
Yeah, people are always asking for new comics, new characters, and they're there, everyone. You just got to order them. You got to read them.
Yeah. Otherwise, another big project we're excited about that's launching in November is Team Phoenix, which is a manga title we've licensed from Japan. The general idea is that it's the characters of Osamu Tezuka's various mangas all combined into one space team in one universe, in like a fun space adventure. So Tezuka is the creator of like Astro Boy, Jungle Emperor Leo, Blackjack, Magma, all kinds of characters. So all those guys I mentioned are all in the book. Sapphire Princess Knight. Sapphire is her name, but her book is called Princess Knight. Imagine all these characters from different types of series. Like some of Tezuka's books are fantasy, some of them are sci-fi. So imagine all these characters combined in one like sci-fi space universe. And it's kind of interesting that the themes are, I'd say, the opposite of Astro Boy, where Astro Boy is all about like robot rights in this future universe of Earth. But in this series, the universe is like 90% controlled by robots. So it's the humans and other like biological, humanoid aliens who are fighting for their rights in this robot controlled universe. But it's really cool. The art, the manga is by Kenny Ruiz, who is a Spanish artist, like from Spain. Originally, he was part of a sort of a tribute project of where people came up with their own ideas of, their reinterpretations of Tezuka properties, and Tezuka Productions and Akita Shoten in Japan liked it so much that they decided, let's hire this guy to do a full manga, like in Japan. So it's a Spanish artist working on a Japanese manga that we're now translating into English.
That's all. And when it releases here, is it going to be in that standard manga size as well, the format?
Yeah. So Udon does you'll see kind of two sizes of manga in general, like a smaller one and a larger one. Udon almost always works in the larger, we call it jumbo manga format. But yeah, it'll be a 5-volume series, which is for manga not that long, and starting in November and coming out every 2 months.
Very good. Yeah, and the first one's set to come out in November, right? You were saying?
Yep.
The press release was a while back, and I just looked it up, and I'm like, I know I put this on my sub. Did they miss it? Like, did this come out already? And it's good to hear that it hasn't come out yet, because this kind of reminded me when it was announced of one of my favorite fighting games was like Tatsunoko versus Capcom, or any major crossover like that, where, as you said, this universe kind of comes together in that way, and it's very exciting. You don't often see the handling of properties like this.
Yeah, it's really good. We just finished production on volume 3, like in terms of lettering and editing and everything. And it's really good. We're working on volume 4 right now. The series just wrapped up in Japan. The 5th volume just came. I don't think a collection has come out yet, but like the individual chapters when they release those in Japan. So I think the series has finished that way. But it's super fun. If you like, man, what are some good comparables? Like early Dragon Ball, like just how adventurous it was. But yeah, it's a really cool series, and the art is gorgeous.
And obviously, Udon goes into several formats, different ways, different forms of publishing when it goes to reaching the mass market. Before we go into some comic industry talk, because that Udon has a very unique perspective on this, were there any other projects that you wanted to let the Brokettes know about?
Sure. Let me tell you about 2 things. One is coming out now is Elden Ring official art book, which is actually 2 art books, just collecting all the art of Elden Ring, that crazy hard game that you will die all the time playing. But it is actually coming. The official release date is next week, next Tuesday. I think that's September 4th is the Tuesday, 4th or 5th. So that's the official release date, where you can get it everywhere, comic shops, Amazon. But you can get it now. We did just a couple weeks early release at Barnes & Noble. So you can order it at Barnes & Noble and get it sent out right now. And you can also order it from the Udon Store website. If you get it from udonstore.com, you get a box to put your 2 books in. It's definitely our biggest release of the year. It's the highest print one we ever did of a book, of like probably by just either one of the books, just counting one of them, at least more than double any other book we've ever printed.
Oh, wow.
Just the quantity. Yeah, because the pre-orders were amazing on it.
Good.
And it kind of completes the spiritual trilogy of video game art books that we've done by this director. We've done the 3 Dark Souls art books and Bloodborne and now Elden Ring. So that's great. It's out now. And then coming in December, which is also getting some good pre-orders, are 2 volumes of art books for the Atelier Ryza series, which is the current. So Atelier is like a long-running RPG series. I don't know how many there are, like 20 of them, something like that, maybe more video games in the series. And they kind of tend to do these little trilogies and give them a subtitle. And so this one's called Atelier Ryza, named after the main character Ryza. And they're RPGs based around alchemy. So the main character is always some kind of alchemist. And the art is just gorgeous, especially for this one. So there are 3 games in this series, and we're releasing art books for the first game and the second game. So Atelier Ryza Visual Collection, both coming out in December. The 3rd art book for the final part of the trilogy just came out in Japan, so I'm sure we'll get to that not too far in the future as well. But yeah, if you're a fan, if you've heard of this game, you'll definitely want to get this art book. I think anyone who knows the game will jump at it.
So that does bring up a question from me of, how do you go about choosing which games you're going to bring over as far as art books over to Udon and to publishing? Does it go with relationships you already have with some of these game companies, or are you able to say, okay, this game's getting a lot of hype, let's do a Starfield art book? Or do you have that kind of freedom, or is it more kind of relationship based?
It's different all the time. In this case, we had already licensed the book. And we also happened to be talking with Namco Bandai, this was not, I mixed up another, this is Koei Tecmo. We happened to be talking with Koei Tecmo about some other projects, and they're like, it'd be great if you did, like some Atelier stuff, because we have a new game stuff coming out. And they're like, oh, we already licensed that book. I'm like, oh, they were very happy about that. I mean, just from working from nothing, I mean, sometimes it might be that we're fans of the property. That's how we did the Samurai Pizza Cats book. We're just like, we have to do that. I don't care what it sells. We're going to do that book. But sometimes it's just that we think the art is great and we know it'll sell sometimes. But we'll also try to do the research and see, how many people are talking about it online. If it's a manga, there are a lot of websites where there's one called, like, say, My Anime List. You can see how many people are a fan. Like, there are people who just say they like that series or are a fan of it, and you go to My Anime List has a page for like every manga and anime with how many people are interested in that, whether it's been released in North America or not. So you get some idea that way. If it's a series that has had something come out in some form, like a book or a strategy guide or something, we can go through a Nielsen Book Scan, which is it keeps track of actual point of purchase sales from people at major bookstores and all kinds of places like that. So you can see, this many people at minimum actually bought a strategy guide for, say, I don't know, Atelier, if it existed. And we're like, well, I think probably a similar amount of people would buy the art book, or we can compare it to another strategy guide for an art book we've already done and see, twice the amount of people bought the art book as the strategy guide, or half the amount of people. So we can kind of gauge things that way. But yeah, we try to do our research, but generally we're just trying to publish good stuff that we would want on our own shelf.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I said before, there are projects where, like, people have come to us and we thought, yeah, I think this would sell really well, but none of us are really fans of this. I don't think we're really the guys to do it, sort of thing. So if there's not somebody at Udon who is either a fan of the property or just from the artwork, it's like, I would be a fan of the property if I'd played this game. If there's not somebody who's interested in Udon, we probably don't want to do it. We're not going to be the best people to hype up a project if we're not personally interested in it. So yeah, we don't pick up books just because we think they'll make money.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. I mean, it's kind of like hand selling 101 a little bit of, I remember at my time at the comic shop, one of the things we had of, like, obviously we can't read every comic out there, but if we're going to recommend something, make sure it's something that you like and that you've read, and not just because, we need to sell our 20 copies of this issue that we ordered, so let's just recommend it to the Wednesday Warriors. And it's like, no, the owner wanted us to be genuine about it. And that passion shows when I told people, hey, get Department of Truth. It's a great read and it's awesome. and it's about this conspiracy theories. And, my excitement for that project would translate over into the customer, and they would then buy it. And already they're on the track of like excitement to read this project. And clearly, it's kind of on the same track there with Udon of, you need people that are, because, they'll put a little extra in there of, if they're excited about that project, it sounds like that will show in the final product.
Yeah, sure. I mean, we did a soft announcement for coming in December. We have a Street Fighter Masters Kimberly comic. We mentioned it at San Diego. It's not available. You can't order it yet, but it is still coming in December. Because we're fans of the property, we're willing to put extra in it. There was a page in the script when the artist came back with the layouts, and I'm just like, it's a shame that this panel is only one panel. So why don't we just add an extra page and make this panel a full page? Doesn't matter. Pay some extra for it just because it'll be cool. So if you're a fan of the property, you're very willing to do that sort of thing.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's really awesome. Well, since you do publish all kinds of various projects and ways, obviously some of the comic publishers out there are struggling in the current market, and it's something that we've seen take quite a shift from 2019 onward, especially. But from what have you seen that Udon has done that makes them a viable company in this era where, you can't rely on just the single issue format to stay afloat all the time? Like even the big two are struggling with that sometimes. They'll do I saw it a lot, especially when doing the orders of like, they were really starting to push the variants instead of the story, or like, retailers, if you order 120% of last month's issue, you'll get an extra discount on this next one. And it's all kinds of gimmicks to just try to get their numbers up, which was frustrating as a retailer, frustrating from readers. Now that I'm fully, a non-retailer and I'm back to being a comic reader and collector, I see the previous catalog, and there's certain companies like the big two that I'm like, I'm not as excited as I used to be for some of these stories, for even some of the covers. I don't know what's changed. I can't pinpoint that exactly, aside from being owned by giant, people like Warner Brothers Discovery or Disney. But what would you say has been Udon's strength in staying afloat there in this market?
Well, there's a couple ways you can look at it. One, I think we always strive for quality and trueness to the property. And that's something that fans pick up on for sure. But from the and quality of our artwork as well. We don't pump out a ton of comics. I mean, like we definitely could, do 24 issues of Street Fighter a year. I don't know if that the quality would remain the same. But looking at it from the other way, from the business perspective, the way Udon has survived a long time, one of the reasons is product diversity and market diversity. So what that to us means that we've not put all our eggs in one basket all the time. So even at the beginning of Udon, when we became a publisher, we were also a creative services company doing art for other people. So one part of the company would go up a bit and one would go down a bit. So we'd, do a lot of publishing was doing well, or maybe the creative services jobs were all coming in, a lot of them. So that was how we kind of started with that. And then we diversified our publishing division into not just comics, but let's do manga, let's do art books, and let's do not just video game art books, but anime art books. So having a lot of different publishing things. And now just in comics, we have several income streams from the comics. So yes, we release to comic shops and sell through Diamond, as we've always done, but we also now we sell a lot through our own website, udonstore.com. And we always have a couple exclusive covers for the website. And to be honest, those exclusive covers usually pay for the whole issue and the printing costs, the creative and printing costs, usually in about a week of going on sale. And then there's also retailer exclusive covers. If a retailer is willing to pay for their own exclusive, they can get it through Udon, as long as we, approve the artist. We think they're up to snuff with the other Udon guys. And now I know people are down on variant covers, all these crazy variant covers, but really, if there's kind of two groups of people who are buying the comics, it's not, there's crossover for sure. And some of the bigger illustrator publishers will take advantage with the crazy 1 in 50, 1 in 100 incentives or something. Udon's incentive covers, just if anybody's not familiar, an incentive cover is, say you order X number of copies, like the store, and they can order one of this special cover. So Udon has we've tried early on some different amounts, but we really quickly settled down to just 5 to 1. So if you order 5 copies, you can get this one special one. Seems to be fine. We're really just hoping that retailers will maybe buy 1 or 2 extra copies, just so we can get more copies on the shelf, because we feel like our comics have always been under ordered. I mean, we sell out of almost everything. We were just talking with Diamond on our last meeting how they're trying to get some people to clear out their old comics that have been sitting around for ages, and Udon doesn't have very many of them at Diamond. So yeah, we do a 15-20% overprint every time from the initial retail orders, and they almost always sell out. So yeah, I think our incentive program's not too bad, and it is a different group of people who are reading the comics and collecting them just for the art on the covers a lot of the time. I've said this on like a couple podcasts lately. It's kind of like the Futurama episode where they visit the art gallery and all the paintings are on like fat guys' bellies. and Fry's just like, well, that's just what people like. They like their art on fat guys in the future. So right now, people just like their art on a comic book for whatever reason. I mean, if we had a new comic and instead of doing variant covers, we just did prints, like you could also buy these prints. I don't think they would sell so well.
Right.
They tend to not when we do a ton of prints, say at a convention. But it is just something that people want to collect right now.
Yeah, I can tell you for sure. I used to be one of those print collectors when I was a teen, where I would go to like a convention and I would buy up all these different art prints. But yeah, it very quickly became I didn't have a good way of hanging up or storing these prints, even though it's like a single sheet, but a lot of times there were different sizes. There was no standard format for a lot of these prints. But for a comic, like putting a nice piece of artwork on a comic, like one, it's cheaper than a print. You get a whole story out of it, and then you get the nice cover on it. You get to store it in a Mylar or in a regular bag and board, and I can throw it in my long box or short boxes and pull them out whenever I want to. I can get it graded. I've gotten some Street Fighter. There's been like an Artgerm exclusives variant, and I've gotten graded from CGC. So it's just a nice piece to have. I don't know what it is about it either. I can't tell you for sure, but just for me, it's the storage ability of some of these art pieces and the fact that it's just a nice format for it. That's kind of my answer to it.
But yeah, so I don't think if you're not, I mean, there's a way to do lots of variant covers and not be damaging,
right,
to your industry. I mean, for Udon, we're doing more comics than we have in a while, and we're still only doing about a dozen separate comic books a year. It's definitely a sustainable model at that level. I don't know if it would be so sustainable if we were doing, 4 comics, 6 comics, 10 comics a month. Even the smaller publishers like Boom or those kind of guys are, they're doing a lot of comics still. I don't think they can do a $50 variant on every comic.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And you guys just got me on that $50 one with, it's got Cammy on there. It's a variant of where she's got like the flag and the bikini on. I was like, from Udon's exclusives. And I had missed out on the Artgerm Cammy one that was on Artgerm Collectibles. Like that one apparently sold out in minutes. And it's like, damn, like, do I want to go into the secondary market? And like you hit that sweet spot, I think, with the number of variants you have available.
Yeah, our standard, so the ones you can get from Udon, we vary it a little bit sometimes, but usually it goes like this. There's standard A available in direct market. There's standard A and B covers, just regular price. C cover most of the time will be a blank sketch cover, which keeps selling even though for really just another cover that says Street Fighter on it, but people didn't get the last one, I guess. So they keep wanting to take them to shows and get sketches. So our C cover is usually a blank sketch cover, and then a D cover is our incentive. And then after that, we'll have a $20 and $50 cover on the Udon store. And they'll usually be variations of the same thing. Maybe a color variation or a costume variation, something like that. So, and our goal is usually that if you can't afford the $50 one or it sells out really fast, the $20 one is really similar and still pretty good.
Yeah.
It's like the consolation prize, but it's still really cool.
I end up with the consolation prize usually. Yeah, they go pretty quick. Some of these, which is awesome. It's great for you guys, and it's great for the retailers too that have those exclusives. For example,
So if you want to talk about, other publishers, like the big publishers, I think they've got to really reconstruct their properties. It's been a lot of deconstructing and a lot of changing and stuff, and you got to get back to the iconic versions of things. And it's not just the characters. If a good example, I'd say like people got to use like the Hush formula, which is like, oh, we're going to do an awesome Batman story with it's a new mystery, but he's going to go on a parade through all of his classic characters and stuff, and kind of good, have that kind of an attitude for like any property, like X-Men. Put the X-Men in the mansion, make it, mostly the 90s animated X-Men, maybe a couple other ones, and have them, a storyline involving some classic X-Men villains. I know they're kind of a mess now that there aren't really any heroes and villains left, but get it back to that point somehow and just tell some good stories. The people who sold those bajillion comics in the 90s most of them are still around.
Mm-hmm.
Or the people who told the super respected stories like Jeff Loeb Superman stories or Frank Miller Daredevil stories. All these guys are still around. Just gotta be willing to put out the money to get them, to convince them to do it.
Yeah, that's the thing I saw when the two publishers especially started getting, all right, now they're owned by AT&T, or now it's Warner Brothers Discovery or Disney, where I noticed a bunch of these artists and writers were not getting their contracts renewed, like some of these bigger hitters. And they were instead going to either Image or some of the other indie publishers, or they were doing their own projects on Kickstarter or Substack, things like that. So I've noticed that the big two have not retained some of these bigger names. It's almost as if when they get too pricey for them, like, okay, well, we got a certain budget and we're not going to meet that if we keep these guys around. So let's go ahead and just release them from that contract and hire this up and coming talent. It's like, okay, it's great to get fresh blood in there, but when most of your line is made up of newer artists and writers, like the quality shows. It definitely did, and I noticed that's when my subscription numbers started dipping as a comic shop and as a reader. Like I've never read. I'm a DC fan through and through, and I've never had this few of a DC issues on my subscription in years, since before, like, oh man, I really can't afford comic books. Like now it's like, well, I'm not excited for these titles. And you as a reader, are you subscribed to certain series, or have you noticed yourself dipping as well in some of the other publishers?
I'm not subscribed to anything, but I basically stopped that with the New 52 for DC. That like knocked me out of the DC universe. So at that point, I just kept reading Green Lantern because it didn't really change.
Right.
Booster Gold, I think that kept going at that time, I think. But I know at some point I was down to just Booster Gold and Green Lantern. And then when Jeff Johns left Green Lantern, like, okay, I'm done. That's it. But yeah, I just felt like, it came in stages, but like, oh, this is not really the universe that I was following anymore. But the only current thing I definitely like, oh, I got to get that from DC is the White Knight universe.
Oh yeah, Sean Murphy.
Yeah, it's just amazing. I read the first series as it came out, and since then I just wait for each collection of each story arc. It's great. I really liked Ninja Turtles Ronin.
Yeah, Last Ronin.
Yeah, Last Ronin. I don't know when it came out, but I bought it not too long ago at a comic store. But the Death of Superman Anniversary special thing, that was really cool because they brought back all the original creators, and it just felt like, oh, this feels like a story of the time. All these stories feel like they could just be other stories that happened at that time. It was just cool to get that vibe again. But yeah, even guys like that, like that's what like Dan Jurgens and Tom Grummett, and like these are solid guys. More people like my favorite Marvel writers are people like Kurt Busiek, like people who are just super comic nerds, but they just use that as the backdrop, their knowledge, and they write good stories. Like when Kurt Busiek wrote Avengers in the late 90s, it was great. Like put all the most iconic Avengers on a team. Guys come in and out. and little short story arcs where they have adventures, not just trying to, we need to darken and rip the team apart and deconstruct everything and show why they're actually horrible and stuff like. No, just have them go on adventures. That's what's really been lacking a lot, is adventures.
Yeah, and one of the other things I've noticed too is as I'm reading some of these things, it's like there's these mandates to put in, like, oh, who's got a movie coming out? This character, okay, let's put Peacemaker in every book somewhere, in every issue, and it seems like the writers are like, you can tell when you're reading it, oh, they threw in Peacemaker in this scene because the season 1 just came out or whatever, and it's like it's transparent as hell, and they don't care, like they really don't care because it's obvious to the readers. There's no way they think we're that dumb. Like I don't know. Like maybe they think, maybe some readers are different and they're like, oh, that's great. I got to see him on the show and now he's in the comic book. For me, I don't know. I really don't like it because I feel like it takes away from the story that they were building. It distracts from it. It's like they take a detour from issue. It's like now issue 3, we got Peacemaker thrown in there. I don't know. It doesn't work.
Yeah. And it doesn't translate to sales from new people for comic books anyway. It doesn't, like, people don't go and watch the new Doctor Strange movie and then they might go to the store looking for a Doctor Strange comic, but they don't find what they're looking for because there's like, oh, this isn't like the movie story, and these aren't the characters that I know. It does work when it's a very close 1-to-1 translation, like The Boys. Like there's tons of differences in The Boys, but it's the same plot, it's the same, general themes and concepts, and most of the main characters. And there's a clear starting point. Go read The Boys Volume 1.
Right.
And just read along. Same with, Walking Dead. It's different, but there's a clear starting point and similar characters. Invincible. So those kind of books have seen a nice boost in sales because of their media. But I don't think Marvel and DC have seen a lot, even though they've, Marvel especially for a decade, they had the biggest franchises in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one of the reasons that manga does so well, is because there has always been that very close 1-to-1 relationship between anime and manga, where either you read the manga and then you want to see the anime, or you see the anime, you want to see the original manga. It goes back and forth. So that's definitely one of the helpful things that have helped manga have a new boom in North America.
Yeah, and I've never understood why it's taken so long for some of these publishers to see that. One of the biggest example was when the first Black Panther film came out, did extremely well in the box office. Everyone was talking about it. But yeah, it did not translate to, all right, let's get these fans of Black Panther who would come in and for that 1 week or 2, we'd have kids coming in, teens asking for Black Panther stuff. And, we'd have the Funko Pops, or we'd have the graphic. I'd order volume 1 of every graphic novel, but no more than that, because I would never see them come back and, hey, I need volume 2 of that. I need volume 3. I'd never see them again, like until the next MCU film came out. And then everyone's asking for, I need to know what's going to happen in that Infinity War movie. Do you have the story? Yeah, I do. It's going to be different though, but here you go. And I'd sell the hell out of it. And so, but yeah, they would never turn into weekly readers. It just does not happen.
I mean, it's both ends. I mean, the movies not being like the comics, but at the same time, the comics are sometimes, you don't want to just, let's make everything just like the movies, but sometimes they're, just shooting themselves in the foot. Like I believe a couple of the last movies, like I think when the last Doctor Strange came out, I'm pretty sure Doctor Strange was dead at the time. Like Stephen Strange was dead in the comics. When the last Spider-Man movie came out, I think that's when they did like a Ben Reilly story arc, something like that. When No Way Home came out. I'm like, what? Why are you doing this at this time? Like those, you can tell those stories, but why are you doing it at this time?
The other weird thing they did too recently with Miss Marvel, they killed her off in the comics, and that was like a big headline. And I'm like, that book never sold well. Like it's a lot of like, I'm like, if half of you that were outraged about the death of this character cared enough to buy the comic, like that character would be one of the best sellers, and it's just not the case. But then we come to find out that the reason they killed her is to turn her into a mutant to later, which I guess is going to line up with what they're doing in the movies. So I'm seeing that a lot too, of they're adjusting the book to match the movies as far as even the origin sometimes. It's kind of like, Dan DiDio, we had him on a couple months back, and, he famously, there's something that always stuck with me that he said is, he's like, we need to stop making comics that serve the films, and we instead need to make stories and comics that are going to inspire future animated or future movies. And I always thought that that should be the headspace that some of these publishers need to be in. Like, don't worry about needing to match, like, oh, well, the character's going to change in the movie, so we got to make her the same here because Disney told us to. But it's like, no, make that new story, make that next Civil War comic book that's going to inspire the movie, make that next, like you were saying, Batman Hush or Court of Owls. Stuff that is going to be like, this was so popular that we need to adapt it into a video game because we know it's going to have the audience. The Batman Who Laughs, like that character took off and then he ended up in the Fortnite games. So we need more of that. And unfortunately, it seems like it's the opposite these days.
I mean, there's just, it's going to suck if it's a bad writer or if it's a bad story, but I think there's too many writers trying to take these characters and say, look how smart I am. Look how clever I am. What I did with Batman or with whoever. It should be, look how much I love and understand Batman. Look how much fun you can have with Batman. Like if like take again Hush. Hush is not deep. Right. It's just a fun story where you get to maybe learn some new, incorporate a little bit of new Batman lore. There's a new character, but generally it's just a kind of a parade of Batman villains throughout this investigation. Kind of a thing, which is, the kind of thing you want for a good Batman story. I think Jeff Loeb wrote that himself, right?
Yeah.
I think I've always said Jeff Loeb has great ideas. Sometimes he should give them to somebody else, but he does, he has a few, if he wants to tell a good story, like all his Tim Sale stuff is great.
Yeah.
But and Batman Hush is super fun. Yeah, I think Jeff Loeb would be a great editor, and just pass some of his great ideas onto other writers would be awesome. Sometimes they fall flat and aren't great, but yeah, man, I just want to see more. Let's get back to fun. Don't need a message. If you write a good story, your message will just naturally come through it. You don't have to put it so you don't have to put it so in the forefront. You need like allegory and subtext and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, and hopefully things do improve in the world of comics, like when the bubble bursts, at least were the big two. I don't know. Maybe that's me wishing, maybe that's a terrible thing to wish for, because I don't know if Disney or Warner Brothers Discovery would go, well, the superheroes aren't the action films of today anymore. Let's cut back on this cost. It's no longer worth publishing. But I don't know if that day will come, if that actually would happen. But maybe then they'd go back to relying on just solid comic storytelling and letting the stories and the artists sell the comic for not just that month, but for years to come, for a forever seller like the Court of Owls or Hush or even like Superman Red Sun, something that's way out there but still told an excellent story. Like I hope we get back to some of that. But it's refreshing to hear that there's publishers like Udon and some of the other indie publishers that aren't mandated to do these things and can sort of have that freedom to use the artists and writers that you deem, quality enough to handle these characters.
Yeah, I think they also the big guys publish too much stuff. Like I think they probably have we need to do X number of comics. Mm-hmm. Let's fill them up. So rather than, well, we have ideas for 20 good comics rather than, we have to do 52 comics. But I think if they trim back their lines, they would be forced to have to do quality stuff. It's kind of another reason why manga is pretty good in North America right now. So there was another manga boom in the early 2000s, and it eventually went burst because anybody was just grabbing anything, license anything that's Japanese that has big eyes and speed lines, just put it out. And there was a lot of junk out there, and it just flooded the market, and everything crashed. So since then, the publishers that survived had to, really curate and just pick the best stuff. And it seems mostly that has continued. Like the manga shelf in a Barnes and Noble is like a heavily curated sampling of stuff that comes out of Japan, because there's tons of stuff in Japan. But you're just seeing the best of the best stuff for the most part on the shelf. If North American publishers could self-curate a little better and maybe just be willing to do less stuff to rebuild things, I think might be better for everybody. Yeah. Imagine if there was only 20 Marvel comics a month. You could buy the whole Marvel universe for like $100.
Right.
Every month.
Yeah. Kind of like the cream rises to the top, and you'd have some of the best publishers. This is why publishers like Image Comics, where they have to pick and choose who the best writers or artists are for that comic. And that's why you have some stories out there from the indie publishers that are more preferred than the big two. It seems like these days you're buying from the big two as a fan of the character rather than, following a creator somewhere. And that's kind of why I also think that, indie publishers have been so successful over the last couple of years, because it's like, look, comic readers still want to keep reading. They're not going to give up comics because, Batman sucks right now. They're still looking, they're still hungry for those good stories. And so they're going to look elsewhere. And I saw that shift as more people moved over to indie publishing when they read and bought their comic books. So, and I thought that was great. I'm like, the comic market is going to survive, at least for the time being, because people are still looking for that good story, and they trust people online. They trust their retailer or their friends or other readers to let them know, like, I just read Saga and you should go back and read all the previous volumes of this, or whatever it is. Or did you know, you're asking for a Darkstalkers game. Did you know that there's comic books that you can order and that you can read? There's graphic novels, there's art books. So it's out there, and I'm glad that the publishers are taking advantage of it by putting out good product that they know that readers are hungry for.
That's what we're trying to do.
Awesome, Matt. Well, I appreciate it. Thank you so much for coming on again and helping, and talking about these comics and graphic novels and manga that's coming from Udon. Always very exciting to see what's releasing from Udon. And please let them know where they can find you and where they can find more Udon merch and comics.
Well, Udon, just do a search for Udon Entertainment. You'll find us. Usually we're Udon Ent, like Udon ENT, on a lot of social medias. So look for us we're on Twitter, and we're on Instagram, and we're on Facebook, and we've got our own Discord as well. And myself personally, I'm Lil Formers on Twitter, LILFORMERS. It's the name of a webcomic that I used to draw, but I've still got the name on Twitter. And yeah, I post about Udon stuff. I post some of my own art. I'll post just what movies I think are great or terrible or whatever.
Yeah, and I saw famously your art showed up in bootleg merchandise.
It's happened a few times. It happens to every Transformers artist. It'll be on. See, I've been on bootleg toys, which are like just fake remolds of official toys, and I've also had my art on third-party toys, which are a company just making their own original toy of the Transformers characters. So I've ended up on both.
They just Google it and they're like, "Yep, this is good. Put it on there." And
this is high enough resolution.
Yeah, I just came back from Mexico City, and I kept an eye out too for that, because I'm like, oh, there's a bunch of bootleg stuff there as far as like Dragon Ball and all that. And now I'm like, oh, maybe I can spot some art from artists that I do recognize. And I wasn't able to find anything this time, but yeah, that's always that cracked me up when you posted that. That's incredible. But yeah, there will be links to everywhere you can find Matt and Udon as well in the description of today's episode. Just swipe on over. If you're driving, come back to the episode, swipe over, and you will find those links. And of course, you can also find the link on the guest section of thereasonsimbroke.com. And this episode, as well as the previous one, will be linked on that page under Matt's picture. You'll see the 2 episode links on there. So, Matt, I want to thank you once again for being on, and to the Brokehead on the other side for tuning in and for checking out these Udon projects. I've been Daniel, joined by Matt, and Brokehead Core. All will be well.